Hi, I'm Ed Parco, and I'm with Amy T. Meyer, and we are the hosts of. Man, it seems like forever since we were on, or at
It
least me anyway.
does.
At least me anyway. Okay, this
It
isn't working
does.
today. All right, and just for people to know, we're doing now Wednesdays at 3:30, once a week. Not that we didn't have enough people to do it, but we just needed to be on a regular schedule and have more quality than quantity. Right?
Yes. Yes. I'm very excited for Wednesdays.
It seems like it. You're just holding that in so well. Did you have a good vacation?
I had an amazing vacation
Is that why
and
you have a smile on your face?
yep, swam with turtles, relaxed. It was super wonderful.
I thought maybe you spent some time with your husband or something, but okay, if the
Well,
turtles and
he
everything
was
else
there.
is
He
important to
was there.
you,
Yes.
that's great. All right, so let's bring on our guests today. Why don't you introduce them and I will bring them in.
Absolutely. So I'd like to introduce my new friend. We're actually best buds now, and I love her name, but I didn't write it down, so we're just going to go with AK
That works.
because yes, and she is currently serving still in the Marine Corps Reserves. But welcome,
Thank
and
you.
we always start everyone else off with the first question
But
is
before we get there, but welcome. You're in the Marines, but welcome. No, there's
welcome.
nothing. All right, Marines are my kin because I was stationed with them, so I don't want to hear it. So
Yeah,
no, and
All
once a
right.
Marine, always a Marine.
no
So
doubt.
yeah.
No
So
doubt.
where are you stationed out of right now?
So I actually drill in Savannah, Georgia at Hunter Army Airfield. We have a small detachment there under Landing Support Company, and we are currently packaged under CLR 45, which is Combat Logistics Regiment 45.
You can tell she's still in.
Yeah.
She's got that lingo still.
All right.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Amy, but the way you said that, I just want to make sure. I know Marines are tough, but still got to be nice.
Yeah,
Sure. Okay.
it's all
So you
good.
always ask, why did you pick the service you picked?
That's a good question. So actually, my journey into the Marine Corps was significantly long, or it felt like it was quite long. But I tried the Navy first because I was already pretty deeply invested in public health, and so when I said, okay, I want to, want to serve in this capacity, originally I knocked on the Navy's door so that I could easily translate some of those skills over. And but even when I was choosing the Navy, I wanted to figure out how I could be a corpsman because I was like, I want to do that, but I want to do it for the Marines. And
That's the corpsman in the Navy.
yeah, yeah. And so I went down that path, but um, one part of the element was they at the time they said they weren't accepting officer packages, and then I was encouraged by the recruiter to. She was like, "Hey, yeah, you're doing your master's in public health. You need to finish that before you start the application process." And then I finished, and I went back to them, and they were still the answer was like no. So I was like, "All right, cool," and actually took a break from applying to the armed services. I did put in an application with the Army several times. They lost it 6 times. I remember literally going down Peachtree. I live in Atlanta, Georgia, so multiple times to that recruiting station and them saying they lost my package. So a little break in there. I finished my master's in public health from Emory University and did some touring in Morocco. Studied Arabic. And when I came back, I was still like, I'm going to serve in this capacity. I don't know with who, but my uncle, who is a retired gunnery sergeant, said, "Hey, let's just go give the Marines a call. Let's do that." So I went to Ashland, Virginia, for a PT session and I guess the rest is history, but it's just a long history. So I ended up going the route with the Marine Corps, training physically to prepare for it. At that time, I was about 30 years old, so 29, 30, somewhere in between there. And it was not challenging physically to get there. For me, I think it was the shifting gears of, hey, you know, you got to take a step down and to step back, because I had already lived so much of life. And so I had to readjust what that was going to look like for the Marine Corps and receiving and listening to orders, right? So I actually went through OCS, I believe it was 2014, and failed. So I was not, I think it was, I'm almost positive that academically I did not meet the mark. I think you got to keep like an 80 and everything, and had like a 79, 78, something like that. And was the Saturday of week 9. I think there's 10 weeks of OCS. And so at that point, you know, card got pulled like, hey, yep, try again type deal. So, but in between that time of like figuring out when to resubmit my application, I was pushed out for Ebola. So I had to deploy to Sierra Leone for Ebola. And so there was another gap in my time of joining the Marine Corps. So I came back, reapplied, and passed the second go round. Not even by much. So even after all that studying and everything, didn't pass by much margin. But that experience gave me more than I thought in the beginning when I failed the first time. And I say to this day that the Marine Corps has taught me how to fail. I've failed numerous times in the Marine Corps. And I don't know what keeps me coming back, except maybe a little bit of pride and just like hunger. But, you know, that not giving up aspect is, I guess, just deeply embedded. And so the other aspect of like learning how to fail, and understanding your ego, understanding what you give and how you grow from that, was a lesson I just didn't anticipate learning there. And so I value that, even as I fail these days. I understand that now failure is me learning, and that it doesn't give me that depressed aspect as it did when I initially didn't make it through OCS. So I ended up staying with the Marine Corps most likely for that reason, because it was such a valuable element of my life, and that I'll carry that with me.
And it is a department of the Navy, so there you go.
That part, there's that part, right? I still
I've been waiting for 9 minutes to say that. So.
I would like to say that, you know,
you already asked that question. It's my turn.
Yeah. All right.
Go ahead,
I have
Amy.
one
Go ahead,
statement.
Amy.
It's
Go
not
ahead.
even a question. Is Travis Manning Foundation says failure is a bruise, not a tattoo. And I love that.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say, you know, and I appreciate you sharing your bruises with us. I have a few.
Thank you. I've never heard that one, but I definitely can. I see that. I value that, and I can definitely see that.
So that's why my wife has bruises all over her all the time. I have no idea where they come from.
Shame on you.
Right? Careful.
Yeah. I don't touch her. It's like, you know, the women they walk into stuff and they're like, how'd I get that bruise?
And it's Violence Prevention Month. Like, come on, Domestic Violence Prevention Month. Like,
I'm sure she's gonna make a comment right about now and protect me. But yeah, no. Yeah. As you get old, you know, people walk into stuff and then they don't remember that they walked into stuff. But anyway, move on. Yeah. All right. So you said you got deployed for the Ebola. That wasn't through the military. That was through where you were working. Were you working for a health organization at the time? That's what. Yeah.
So I kind of do this scale, but I balance between the Center for Disease Control, and at the time I was working for emergency response team, doing quite a bit of like logistics, and so I had the opportunity to deploy. Took that opportunity. Another incredible experience of life. That has helped create me to who I am. One of the reasons so Amy, you asked like why that branch, but I remember telling my mom at a young age, like the only thing I want to do is like help save lives. That was the only thing I wrote in my journals. And she, I remember telling me like, well, going in the military is not the way to do that. I was like, oh yes, it is, which is why I wanted to be a corpsman. And you know, she discouraged me from it multiple times, and then finally figured out like, okay, there's no stopping AK. There's no stopping Nene doing this. So yeah. But yeah, that's what brought me to West Africa for that response.
Wow. Now, are you still juggling both?
I am. As
So
we speak.
So the CDC is what you were at, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So did you get mobilized for COVID, all that stuff that we just went through?
Well, the fortunate part is that I was already activated on the Marine Corps side. So I had taken orders. And I do say fortunate because when you're in that business of like saving lives, like you get it from both ends and it gets draining. And I was actually happy to be on orders during that time. And then, you know, of course, COVID hit DOD, and then it was like, it's a whole nother ball game here. So, yeah.
What do you specialize in now?
So my trade in the Marine Corps is logistics. I am also a civil affairs officer. My trade in, I guess, the civilian world is multiple, but in HIV/AIDS is where I predominantly work at in the CDC. But community engagement is the team that I work for.
No, because when we first started, you talked about how, because I told you my son's in Alaska, and you talked about how the article was about
so
suicide. So I thought maybe you were in that somehow. That's what I was saying.
It's interesting. I guess I should back up a little bit from that, but like my introduction to public health was in initially in syphilis as well as suicide, and so that
so
really
they were like, you have the S's and down. Is that what they were
yeah
doing?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like, give me that department.
S to
You're
Z.
so
That's
similar.
yours. That's yours. Yours is S to Z. All right.
That's right. Yeah. So that's how I got into this club of public health is from a young age, right? Like one of my brother's friends committed suicide, and I remember my mom trying to hide it from me as an adolescent. But I knew very well the conversations that they were having, and I was upset that they were excluding me from it because of how close he was to my brother. And I was like, this is fucking stupid. Excuse my language, but this is stupid. Like I'm here too, you know? And although I'm this big and I wasn't friends with him, but my brother was, and he came over to the house and he ate chicken with us on Fridays and we watched football and stuff together. So, you know, I felt at a young age, like disrespected for not being included in the process as they grieved.
I think that's interesting. I had my cousin's only son died by suicide. And when it happened, my oldest was actually in basic training, and my youngest, we didn't have her go. I didn't have her go to the funeral because it was so devastating to us as a family. And so I felt like it would be too traumatizing to see her grandfather and her uncles just bawling.
Right. Yeah.
And she was very disappointed in me and felt excluded. And so I think that's interesting.
Well, I think that it's very important to take that. Like, what year was that for you, if you could estimate?
I think it was around 2014, 2015.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, and we take the different generations. So I was 8 at the time and 37 now. So like that was a time where like even engaging conversations about suicide was probably taboo as talking about AIDS, right? Like, but even at that age, she felt excluded, right? And so I think it says a lot to how much we can grow and be inclusive about the approaches, the solutions, the resources, the outlets as we package suicide and prevention and intervention.
And I think everybody needs to go through that grieving process, because if they don't, then when their mom or dad, someone really close, it really affects them even harder, because they don't know how to deal with those emotions. It allows it's, I mean, and as negative as this is going to sound when I say it, but being a corpsman in the Navy, you deal with death, right? And so you get used to it to a certain point. It's still not your kid or your mom or your somebody close to you, but you kind of get used to it, so you can deal with it and you're not as emotional. However, those other times will affect you even more. And not allowing people to go through these processes, you're not protecting them, you're making it worse for them. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to come off wrong on that, Amy.
No, I absolutely agree. Just a couple of years after that, my youngest, dealt with self-harm and her own suicidal ideations. And TMF just did a study that said, or I don't think it was them who did a study. Somebody did a study that said that the most affected kids for suicide right now is 10 to 14.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's because of the pandemic or whatever, but she was in that window. And truly, I dealt with those things wrong where she was concerned. But it was so painful. Like I said, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she's in college now. She's fine, but it was huge.
Yeah.
And so it's just interesting that you and her share that experience for whatever it was.
Right.
And see, it's okay to have those ideation. It's when you actually act on them is the problem. Everybody thinks about stupid stuff, and what I should, that's just okay. You have to be okay with it. And if you have those issues, you need to be able to talk to somebody to get help. That's the problem with veterans, is we don't talk. We don't want to get help. We want to get help, but we think of it as a weakness by asking for help. And that right there shows you that from 10 to 14, they don't know they should be asking for help, because that's not what, or would they even ask for help if we know you could?
Right. And what does that look like for them in that age group? What do the resources look like for them? And is it always therapy? One of the things that I've really been embracing, especially on this
make a sequel so you don't feel so isolated.
This journey right now is looking and listening to alternative resources, right? Like, so obviously mental health is massive in our country right now, and I would even say global right now, and probably stimulated out of the COVID pandemic. But I think and know for a fact that existed in our workspaces well before then. And so when we look at resources, it's always that, hey, VA, like the traditional, like go seek therapy. But like, what if somebody's therapy is, like, for me, riding my bicycle? What if someone's therapy is gaming, iRacing, like, writing a book? Like, how do we, especially in our military community, embrace that? How do we embrace the alternative resources in the same package, right? Like, in how do you market that? How do you not sell it to them, but like, how do you use someone's regular day-to-day, this is what I do to decompress, as their way out, and say it's okay?
I think it's normalizing mental.
There, we just said it. It's okay.
Yeah,
whatever they want to do, whatever works for you is okay. There's no rules that you have to do it a certain way. You just need to get the help, and how that ever is, right? Because someone asked, like, you need to, what's that? When they sit there and not think about things, I can't think of the word right now.
Meditate.
Thank you. Which I don't do. But I was like, what I used to do was my bike. I'd go for, a 60-mile ride. And during that period of time, I don't think about anything except my pedals. And can I push that over that 27 miles an hour? Yeah, I can push pretty hard.
Yes.
How can I do it? And I'm not talking downhill. And anyway, and they're like, how can I get more cadence? That's all I'm focusing on. But that was my form of meditation. Whatever works for you, because some people can't just sit there and think about it. And I'm not trying to say meditation is the way to go, but it's however it works for you.
Yeah. Right? And I mean, I believe in the thing called like moving meditation. Like that is why I didn't before this ride start riding with anything. Like, I just ride with what the thoughts that are in my head. So I started doing these dedication rides for those who have either committed suicide or completed suicide, or are struggling, right? And sometimes I'm on the struggle too. And I started to, when I was cycling, I listened to the stories their family told me about them or the stories they told me about themselves. And that was my moving meditation. That was it. Get on my bike and go. Let me get out of this office and go.
I
Is
think
that
it's
some?
also
Is that a ride thing you do? I'm sorry, did I miss that whole for people committing suicide? Or
Well, no, I mean, so
it
I was
should be, because the way you said it, it sounded like it was something you do for on a regular basis, and I was like, I'm in for that. So
right. Well, so I did this, and I'm still on this journey. So I started cycling around the end of August. And really what started this was obviously my own, I need to get out, but being in a group of entrepreneurs who are, already doing suicide intervention and prevention activities. And so, I kind of reached out to him and I said, hey, do you guys want to do something like together? Like, I don't have a business, but like, do you guys want to like figure out how to show off what you do so that people can use you all as resources as well? And I was like, I don't have anything. All I've got is this bike. So, hey, if I get on the bike, and ride and talk about what resources you guys use, what do you have? So I started that, and it's been quite interesting. Most of my cycling journeys, I'm not like initiating conversation with people. It's the reverse. And I was quite surprised at how these conversations even got started. Like I didn't have a uniform or anything that said I'm cycling for suicide or against suicide or whatever. And I was coming across people's paths that was a topic of conversation. And in fact, I was cycling in near Lejeune, Top Sill, and I got off the Jeep to go to get my bike off, and I went to do a video of motivation, like I call them morning spins. So whatever's on my mind, I just kind of give a morning spin, a morning motivation. So I had asked this gentleman if he would hold my camera while I did it. So when I finished, this lady sitting on a bench, she asked me, she said, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm just about to go for a bike ride. And she was like, no, what are you doing? You said something about suicide. What are you doing? And I was like, oh, nothing. Like, I was just, giving a morning motivation. And she said, do you see this name on this bench? And I was like, no. So I walked over, read the name, and it was Tanner Earl Jones. And so she was telling me about this young man who loved to surf. And she asked me if I had ever heard of a surf out. And I said, no. And she said, well, this young man, very loved by the community here, he committed suicide. And what they do is they all, no crap, surf out, usually with some leis of flowers, and get in a circle and throw the flowers in the middle and, say something about their loved one. So I'm sitting here listening to this woman, and I'm like, okay, well, if you don't mind, I'm going to cycle for Tanner today. And so that's been my journey thus far since 29th of August, is these type of conversations, people telling me about their loved ones or themselves. And when I get up and go ride the next day, that's who I cycle for. So.
Wow. That's amazing. Amy, I know you had something to say and I cut you off. So, but
I have no idea what I was going to say, but
all right. Well, I have another thought. So one of the things we're doing here is we're doing the 22. So helping the Brave 22, which has to do with reaching out to 22 people a week instead of doing push-ups or whatever, reaching out to whether they're 22 veterans or whether they're 10 veterans or whatever, reaching out to people to help them with any issues, making sure everybody's okay. And that's something we're starting here. I'm going to have the hat finished. Supposed to have it next week. And basically it's the helping the Brave logo with the 22 in red, black and white. So that's something. And then we were approached by a t-shirt company, and I'm thinking now after this talk, I want to have that as our t-shirt. So
nice. Yeah, no, I understand Mission 22 and their drive and purpose. And so, I've been obviously reading a lot as well these past couple months. And something that caught my eye recently was the data and where it's been lost. And I think it's called Operation Deep Dive. And they are doing a deep dive into those lost numbers. Where are they at? And are now, estimating 44 as being the number of veterans who commit suicide on a daily basis. And I think some of the numbers that are lost is like in like poisoning or, I know a firearm is like the number one. I think it's number one. But maybe some data was lost in those who like, take too many pills or, alcohol abuse or something like that. And that's not considered or wasn't considered in the calculation. So there's a lot of research being conducted right now, as well as different initiatives and like I said, resources. One that I had come across just before I started cycling was the Air Force. I was super impressed by this article. I was like, what the heck? How do they do this? So they worked with a small company called Moth and Flame to pilot a virtual reality training on giving you the bare bones on how do you talk to someone in crisis. And it could be suicide, it could be sexual assault, it could be anything, financial stress, whatever it is. But they designed a virtual reality suicide intervention training. And so I was like, well, where do I get my hands on one of these things so I can try it out? And I finally did. And so during my cycling journey, I put that in my backpack. I started just putting different resources that I learned about on the way in my backpack so that I could share them with others, because my conversations were geared towards that. So I was like, okay, well, let me do it. Let me try it. See what happens. So
I remembered my thought.
Okay.
Okay. So I really believe, when we say things like normalize mental health, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when you're talking about alternative therapies and different things like that, I think part of it is learning how to be supportive of one another and also share things.
Yeah.
Like I actively share with different people that I'm in counseling, Mark's in counseling.
Yep.
We go to group together for combat veterans. And, I also believe in equine therapy, and all these different things. And I think it is finding the tool that works for you.
Right. Right.
But we have to be able to discuss it. So when people think like only in a crisis, you need these things.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
When my daughter-in-law died by suicide, my counselor was more incredibly impactful for my family than any other one person. And I can't imagine trying to find a counselor at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Right. And that's that whole 22 to reach out to 22 people a week, because a lot of people just need to be talked to. They just need, we had 22 Mohawks who give out therapy dogs, right, to vets. And that they've never had lost a guy yet, or a vet, I should say. There's women and men, but they haven't lost anybody yet. There's that better. And since they've given the dogs to these veterans, and it's just a matter of reaching. And that's why we're like, just by reaching out to people and seeing how they're doing, just will make a difference in someone's day.
Yep.
So that's that whole 22 for helping the brave that we're doing.
No doubt. I mean, I have like gone through probably the depths of whatever, and I say it, the last thing that I wanted was someone to reach out to me, but the first thing I needed was for someone to reach out, because I mean, I say it all the time. Is like, check on your confident friend. Check on that one who's getting it right and knocking it out the park all the fucking time.
Yeah.
Because like that person is struggling and they will cover it up. And I say they, because I include myself in it, in knocking it out the park. That is part of their motivation day to day. So,
well, and I think overachieving is numbing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, and we don't realize it. So that's the workaholic. That's the, possibly volunteeraholic sometimes.
Possibly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it's all of it. Like you said, it's sharing the tools that work for each of us and not hiding it.
Right.
Like, I think it's interesting how many people who are in therapy that don't share it, thinking because we still see it as a weakness.
Totally. Right. But like the other thing is like, okay, so therapy, like going to a therapist is seen as weakness, but a buddy who, games all night, like might also be embarrassed to say that he games all night as a release, because he's then judged as, oh, that's like the loser thing to do. Like all you do is sit in front of the game, and that, you know what I mean? But maybe that is that person's outlet.
We had a lawyer on who talked about she goes to therapy and then her release is horrible reality TV shows.
Right. Like binging on that. Like, it could be anything. It could be anything. And I think in the, particularly in our armed services, our law enforcement, certainly, fire and all of nursing, like during COVID, like you have to listen. You have to listen to what that person's outlet is and give them that space. Like there's no room for judgment here at all.
Nope.
Yeah.
None.
Yeah.
Nope.
Unless what gets Amy, then that's okay. So.
All right, Judgy McJudger.
There you go. You know them?
Jacqueline?
Yeah.
I don't know them.
Neither do I.
Okay.
We'll leave that off. We'll edit it out later. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Very well.
Amy, that sweet nose. I think they're talking to you, Amy.
I also
you got the lookers. You got the lookers.
Yeah.
You got all these people coming after you now. You better hide.
That's all right.
You were saying, AK?
Well, no, I was just saying, I said in that light, I think that we can do a better job of packaging that. Like, we're coming up on a collaborative of a mental health day for families, and it's literally just like, I would say, a hodgepodge of resources and outlets for people just to come out and have a good time that day. Maybe like if our sisters and brothers in DOD just like had more of those days, instead of just that one family day from recruitment, or that one family day out of the year where we all jump in a bouncy house. Like maybe just have them more frequently.
Well, and I wonder if there's other things that you could do. Like I have kids that are neurodivergent, and so like holidays, like managing a holiday, is different. Like once I learned, and I'll go back with my youngest, learned what she needs and how to create space for her, but also how to be encouraging. And so, for us, it's all about the snacks.
Yeah.
I can lure her back into the room.
Okay.
With compelling snacks.
Gotcha.
But I also know there's time in which she just needs to have space by herself.
Yeah.
So I don't always want to be luring her back.
Yep. Yeah.
But things like bouncy houses or, things that could be overstimulating aren't a great way to get her to participate with other military families.
Yep. And that should be considered as well. Definitely.
She went to yellow ribbon events with Mark post deployment and got to sit into different, almost like counseling sessions or different things like that, which really allowed her to kind of lean into, because she has a love of learning and different things like that.
Yeah.
And then they went out to eat.
Right. Yeah. No, that so I keep a box of Legos in my office, and they laugh, but they're like, is that box of Legos for you? I was like, it's for me and anybody else who wants to use them. But like as an ADHD, like hyper focused or, attention deficit here, like if I sit down and I have my Legos in front of me, please don't talk to me. I'm playing with my Legos. Like, let me be. It's my way of, centering.
So funny story about AUSA, because you had asked me about that. I went to a president's training in Virginia, and I brought clay because I can listen better if my hands are busy.
Got you. Yep.
And then, I have a paper with pen, but it can be embarrassing in certain areas.
Right.
But at AUSA, I'm like, I'm here to learn AUSA, and I'm doing it free as a volunteer.
Right.
So I'm going to do me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get more if I do it this way. And it was super funny because people were, not questioning like making me feel bad, but just questioning because they had never been like in a boardroom with somebody with clay. And I picked clay because it's quiet.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Poppets, all the other things are noisy.
Yeah. Spinners.
Silly putty would be noisy too.
Well, but you can do things with it,
bubbles and everything.
And I did feel tested. Like there was a couple times people asked me questions, and I think I had created a whole city around me of snowmen and stuff like that, and I was able to completely engage with what their question was and how we used it in our area and stuff like that.
Right.
So hopefully it was learning for them as well.
Yeah.
All right, AK, we don't want to keep you all day. Anything else you want to add before you go?
I would just add that, don't judge, be open, and ask your friends, ask your confident ones, ask your ones that are struggling, figure out how you can help them out.
Yeah, I would say just reach out to 22 people a week, see how they're doing, because it's going to get bad here in the next 6 months. We're going to see a lot of layoffs. We're going to see a lot of other stuff that's happening in the market. So people are going to struggle a lot more, which we haven't really struggled in some of us have, some of us haven't in the last year, but it's going to get bad. And so just really reach out to people. So,
well, yeah. And I lastly, I appreciate you guys extending the invitation. I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for all those who are helping me on this journey. And hopefully we can, continue to be aware.
And thank you for all you do. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Amy, thank you for being here today. It's nice that you finally showed up. You're constantly gone. It's me. I'm gone. Just been busy the last few weeks. Anyway, all right. Thank you all. And I want to thank you for listening and watching this. If you like what we do here, just subscribe.
Awesome.
All right.